There we
In,
go.
in 2025, Mike Nowak celebrates 28 years talking about gardening, the environment, and green living. Before going strictly internet, he hosted programs on WGN Radio, WCPT 820 AM, Q4 Radio, and WCGO 1590 AM. For 2 seasons, he was co host of the local gardening and food TV program Dig in Chicago. His award winning column was on the inside back page of Chicago Gardening Magazine for 16 years. In 2014, Around the Block Press published his first book, Attack of the Killer Asparagus and Other Lessons Not Learned in the Garden. So we really appreciate your coming and thank you so much. I'm going to stop my share now.
Okay. And I want to thank everybody for being here on a Wednesday evening. Um, and I've got a lot of information here. I'm going to whip through it as fast as I can because there's a lot going on in the world right now, as you know. Um, and I do want to give a shout out to Sharon. Hi, Sharon, who is I know is watching here today. Appreciate it. So let's just see if we can share this and get right to it. And let's hope this works because we were having a little bit of an issue early on. Let's see what that does. See if it pops into. Come on. There we go. All right. And there's actually a shot of my backyard, which is what I call controlled chaos, and sometimes not controlled. But that's okay. That's okay with me. And that it doesn't even look like that anymore because that was a couple of years ago. It just changes every single year. And I was thinking I should, expand this, changing or rather fixing climate change in your backyard and your front yard and your living room and maybe at your office and just add, but the title's already too long, so we'll leave it as it is. Let's see. Yes, this is working, and it makes me very, very happy. So the question is climate change happening? Well, unless you've been living on the dark side of the moon for, I don't know, 30 years, you know that it probably is. But let's look at the science. And I'm going to ask you a question. Normally, I would do this in person, and I would ask the audience to respond. In this case, you can't really. You can pop something up in the chat room if you want, but I'm going to go through this quickly, so I won't have a chance to look at it. So, what is this? Okay, and it's not a fabric from Joanne because Joanne's went out of business. They went bankrupt. It might be from Michael's. But no, that's not it. But those of you who've been following uh, climate change probably have a pretty good idea of what this is. And I'll give you a hint here. Actually, I'll give it away by popping this up. And you can see it's global temperature change from 1850 to 2024. And blue representing cooler temperatures, red representing hotter temperatures. And as you can see, the trajectory. Here's another way to look at it. And this is from a graph, a website called showyourstripes.info. You can find more of these at that website. And this gives you an idea, with the baseline being basically 1850 to 1900. And what has happened then is that the Industrial Revolution took place, and we've increased global temperatures by 1.3 degrees centigrade, actually more. But when this graph came out, it was 1.3, but you'll see different numbers. Is it 1.3? Is it 1.4? Is it 1.5? Some of us have had, like in 2024, going above 1.5. It's been a rough couple of years. And there are people who say it's the sun. That's what's going on here. So can we blame the sun? No. And here's why. Look at this graph. And the sun's radiance is the yellow line on the bottom. The temperature rise on Earth is the orange line above that. And they diverge as of about 1980, where the sun's radiance is steady or slightly falling, but the temperatures on Earth are going straight up. So it ain't the sun. So, questions, climate change happening? Well, I think so. And most of the climate scientists in the world think so as well. Um, However, and I've had to just add this to my talk in the last few months because it's getting harder to figure out, get the information. This was taken by grist.org in consecutive days. January, if you look in the upper left, you'll see January 27th of this year. The one on the right, if you look in the upper right, is January 28th. And what is missing here? Well, what's missing is what's highlighted on the left. If you're looking for environmental topics at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States of America, on the left, as of January 27th, you could look up climate change, you could look up environmental justice. As of the day after that, you could not. They had suddenly disappeared. And I went back the other day, and that is still the case. This is from July 1st by the New York Times. The U.S. Global Change Research Program has released their 5th National Climate Assessment. They are supposed to be working on their 6th climate assessment, but finding that information, which you used to be able to do at globalchange.gov, well, the site was taken down. Now, some of this information from our government has just been moved to other places. It seems as though to make it harder to find it. You can sometimes find it, and other people are starting to archive things. But in April, the administration pulled nearly $4 million in funding from a Princeton program to improve computer models predicting changes in the oceans and atmosphere, claiming the work created climate anxiety among young people. Well, I'm an older person, and I can tell you that I experience climate anxiety almost every day. That same month, the Environmental Protection Agency failed to submit its annual report to the United Nations detailing the country's greenhouse gas emissions. In May, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, ended its 45-year tradition of tracking billion-dollar weather disasters. This is just some of what's happening from our government right now. Now, as I said before, not everything has disappeared. Some of it is just harder to find. But there is good news. After the government made it difficult to access climate.gov, a group of climate experts, some of whom previously worked there and were fired, are creating a new website called climate.us. So I added that to the handout that you can click on, courtesy of the fine folks in Evanston. And that will be there. There's not a lot on it right now, but I assume there'll be much more very, very soon. But let's get back to reality. Why is climate change happening? It's us. It's all of us. 8 billion of our friends and relatives and strangers. We're putting too much carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. And here's where they're coming from. If you look at the sector, energy is by far the largest sector of where emissions come from. And if you look in the upper right-hand side, energy use in industry, energy use in transportation, energy use in buildings, and it all makes sense. But look at the upper left, the green area, agriculture, forestry, and land use. And it makes some of us scratch our heads and say, what? Wait, agriculture and forestry? Say it ain't so. Well, here's a problem. Agriculture is responsible for around 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions, 70% of freshwater withdrawal, half of the land use, and 78% of eutrophication, which is when you have bodies of water go bad on you. It's a hot mess, said Leah Penniman in the book, What If We Get It Right? And I'll be talking about that in just a second. So what can we do? Well, if we restored 15% of croplands and pasture lands to natural ecosystems, and to be sure, a lot of that cropland and pasture land is for meat production. And if we could prevent 60% of expected species extinctions, I mean, we could if we did that and sequester almost 300 gigatons of carbon dioxide. Here's another one. The problem. Industrial agriculture has led to more than 133 billion metric tons of carbon in soil being released. Much of U.S. topsoil in the last 30 to 50 years has lost 30 to 50% of its organic matter in the last 100 years. So what can we do? Well, if we improve farming practices, we could reduce greenhouse gas pollution from agriculture by 10%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it would be. Every 1% increase in soil organic matter could sequester roughly 8.5 metric tons of atmospheric carbon and hold 20,000 more gallons of water per acre. We're talking per acre to get that result. So what does this mean when we're losing carbon dioxide or carbon in our soil? It goes into our atmosphere, basically. And for all your friends who say, well, all of this is cyclical, all they have to do is look at this graph, right? Because, well, it goes back not quite a million years. It goes back about 800,000 years. And you can see it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, except when you get to the 20th century and the 21st century. And look what happens there as the level just shoots up. And if you look at the dotted line, for millennia, carbon had never been above that line, which was around 300 parts per million. It doesn't take much for carbon dioxide to have a serious effect. I mean, as you know from high school, our atmosphere is basically nitrogen and oxygen, and then there's a bunch of other gases, which don't amount to much, but it doesn't take much for carbon dioxide. But that's what you saw there, the 420, that's not the current level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. When man first walked on the moon, the carbon dioxide concentration was 325 parts per million. By 9/11, it was 369. When COVID shut us down, it was up to 414. This week, when they wrote this, the Energy Mix wrote this, the planet hit the highest levels ever directly recorded. That was in May. And now we have hit over 430 parts per million. Back when the Industrial Revolution started, we were much, much lower than that. In fact, I had that number. Oh, yeah. Before the Industrial Revolution, we were at 278 parts per million. And we're now at 430. Now, it might not be that today because it changes from day to day when they measure it. And it, for some reason, the parts per million is the worst in May. It always is from year to year. All right, and here's Joe Rogan's new favorite graph, because this is making the rounds now. This is a study of 485 million year history of Earth's surface temperature. And if you look at where we are, go all the way to the right, the current geological stage, we are not very high on there. We're low. And if you look at the history of the last 485 million years, there have been times when we have been much hotter than we are now. And some folks, apparently Joe Rogan, who happens to be a very famous scientist, are saying things like, what are you worrying about? We're at one of the lowest temperature levels in the last 485 million years. Here's the problem with that. And the woman, co-author Jessica Tierney, who co-authored that study, says Joe Rogan seems to be saying that because geologically speaking, we are in a colder climate that we don't have to worry about human-caused global warming. Nothing could be further from the truth. It certainly has been warmer than today in the deep geological past, but those past warm periods developed slowly over millions of years. As a consequence, life on Earth had time to adapt. The problem with current global warming is the speed. The warming that humans are causing is unbelievably fast. And so humans and other life forms that we share the planet with can't fully adapt. In fact, rapid warmings in the geological past are often associated with mass extinctions. Abrupt climate change is hard for life to tolerate. So that underlies the danger in allowing our climate to warm so fast right now. And as I said, it's warming very, very fast. You see, we went from 278 to 430 in a matter of 150 years, a little bit more than that. In fact, we've got the highest greenhouse gas concentrations in the last 3 million years. Carbon dioxide traps heat, so the temperature of the planet is rising, said Michael McFadden at NOAA. It's real simple physics. So here's a chart you want to look at. If this is going to keep you awake at night, the 2 hottest years on record just happened. And this is a chart. And if you look at the orange line is 2023, the red line is 2024, and the black line is this year, 2025, and it takes us to August of this year. In 2023, starting in June, the global warming on Earth and the atmospheric warming took off like a rocket. You can see all the other lines below it that represent other years. We just blew through those. Now, to be sure, this is an anomaly, and we're likely to settle back down. As you can see in 2025, it looks like we're already settling down. But for those 2 years, 2023, 2024, we just went through the ceiling. In fact, we went over 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is something I'll tell you about in a second. It was a goal set by the Paris Climate Agreement. So let's recap. I mentioned that in 2015, the Paris Agreement set a goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, or about 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial numbers. We blew through that, as you saw on the graph just now, in 2024. It was more than 1.5 Celsius, warmer than pre-industrial level, making it the first calendar year to exceed that mark. July 22nd, 2024, a little over a year ago, was the hottest day in recorded history. And when I say recorded, you got to remember, this is when human beings are on the planet. There have been hotter days on the planet millions of years ago, but this is in human history. And that was according to the European Climate Service. Now, the reading beat a record that had already been set the previous day. So we had 2 hottest days on Earth in recorded history back to back in 2024. The last decade has likely been the hottest in the last 120,000 years. Welcome to the future, because that's, we'll see. But there's a saying about how the hottest year, the year you're experiencing right now is probably the coldest year you're going to experience in your lifetime. But there's a 10-word mantra for climate change that you should know about. Scientists agree. It's real. It's us. It's bad. There's hope. And I learned this from Covering Climate Now, which is a group of journalists who cover climate change. And I've been to some of their meetings. And the idea is, let's get the science out there, but we don't have to despair. All right. Which takes us to gardening, which I assume why some people are here. And the USDA hardiness map, which divides the country into 13 hardiness zones, each 10-degree zone subdivided by 5-degree increments. So you've got like zone 4A and zone 4B. And then we had a 2012 edition based on averages from 1976 to 2005. Then a new map came out a couple of years ago. The new map is based on 30-year averages from 1991 to 2020 of the lowest annual winter temperatures within specified locations. Chicago is now in zone 6B, and I mean Chicago proper, the city itself, because some of the suburbs are not. In 1990, it was in zone 5, so it shows definitely we're getting warmer here. And this is the 2012 map. Now, I'm going to hit the button, and it's slowly going to change to the latest version. What I want you to watch, look at the middle of Illinois there, where the green area is, and you're going to see it move up. So I'm doing that, and it changes, and you can see how much farther north the warmer temperatures have come in the 2023 map. Now, this is a better way to show it if we just look at the state of Illinois. There's the 2012 map, and you can see the 2023 map, how the warmer area, the 6A, has risen from the middle of the state to the upper part of the state. And look especially around Chicago. Look on the left, and you can see the green area, how small it is in the 2020 map and how much larger it is in the 2023 map. It means that area around Chicago is also getting warmer. And a lot of that has to do with the effect of the lake. Here's another one. This is from the US EPA. So let's imagine that we're on the road we're on, and we managed to keep our emissions down a little bit lower. Okay, that we're successful in slowing things down. By mid-century, Chicago will have a climate that's more or less like Memphis. By the end of the century, it'll be more like Little Rock. Now, if we're not good at that and we allow things to go too fast, by mid-century, Chicago will have a climate like Oklahoma City, and by the end of the century, more like Dallas, Texas. So this is our future if we are not careful. As for growing things, people in Arkansas can think about planting mandarin oranges, but New Yorkers might want to be careful about planting native sugar maples because they like cooler climates. Gardeners in Massachusetts can consider planting cold hardy camellias. You know, maybe we'll be able to plant camellias in Chicago at some point. You know, I guess some people consider that good news. But there are other plants that will not do as well when things get too warm. And other changes that are going to happen. Precipitation in the Midwest is expected to become more intense. You've experienced it yourself. You've seen Milwaukee had what ridiculous rain event earlier this summer. We've been getting them in Chicago as well, leading to flood damage, strained drainage systems, reduced drinking water. And the other syndrome that might happen is regions where we used to get snow. Remember snow? I don't remember snow very well anymore. I don't know if you do. But now we get slush. We get freezing rain. We get cold rain. And this is likely to happen more and more in our area as the temperatures get warmer. And some scientists fear that the rate of climate change is accelerating, which is a wild card. So what does it mean? Well, it means more storms. According to NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information, in 2024, there were 27 individual weather and climate disasters with at least $1 billion in damages. Oh, wait, didn't I just say the government is going to stop counting those? So I suppose if they don't count them, they never really happen. But there were 28 events like that in 2023. And then there's this. This seems to me, I don't know about you, like 1 million years ago. This was California in January of this year. It seems like it happened forever ago. The cost of the Los Angeles fires could reach $250 billion. We're not talking about $1 billion. We're talking about 250 times that. Climate change is implicated in why they were so extreme. And remember Hurricane Helen in North Carolina? Some of you might have had friends there who got flooded out. And climate change is estimated to have caused 50% more rainfall in Hurricane Helen, and I should learn how to spell hurricane. I will add an E to that. So here's some related questions. Are we in the 6th mass extinction event? Is species loss connected to climate change? I dare say yes. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, global warming is projected to result in 1/3 of the Earth's animal and plant species going extinct by 2050 if current greenhouse gas emission trajectories continue. And here's a chart of extinctions. And they don't start in the 20th century, as you'll notice. They really start in the 18th century, the 19th century. They really start to accelerate in the 20th century. And it's not just climate change. I dare say it has to do with guns as well, and our ability to kill other species, or poison them, or other things, or habitat loss. But you can see the dotted line at the bottom. That's the background. That's what you would expect the extinction rates to have been without intervention from human beings. This is what the western part of the United States looks like. A lot of you, I'm sure, go out there. I believe this was taken in Wyoming. We're losing trees at an incredible rate all across the country, actually, not just in the high mountain west. But this tells us there are more dead whitebark pines than live ones in some areas. And that's causing problems. And it's tinder, and it has to do with climate change and wildfires caused by climate change, as well as insect damage, as well as disease, all connected to even slight increases in temperature. We're losing our insects as well. This represents the percentage decline in some global insect populations over the past decade. Caddisflies, which are an aquatic insect that many of you probably don't even know about, 68%, but butterflies, beetles, bees, mayflies, dragonflies, stoneflies. If you look on the right side, the total global insect population decline over the past decade is estimated to be at 41%. So insects, who cares? Good riddance, right? Well, inadequate pollination has led to a 3 to 5% loss of fruit, vegetable, and nut production, and an estimated 427,000 excess deaths annually from lost healthy food consumption and associated diseases, including heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and certain cancers. And that was 2022. I'll bet that number's over 500,000 now. This is what happens when you lose your insect population. And this just is a graphic. It's not about birds. If you look on the lower left, it's global biodiversity. The birds represent the amount of global biodiversity, as does the color. In the green side, that means there's more biodiversity. When it gets to yellow and gray, there's less. And this is from 1970 to 2020. So you can see we are losing global biodiversity. There's been a 73% decline. I just like it because I think it's a nice graphic. A terrifying one, but well executed. So to put it another way, why care if species go extinct, says the man standing on the house of cards. Well, we all know why we should care. Timber. So can any of us fix this by ourselves? Don't be redunculous. But you don't have to sit at home sobbing into your margaritas. And if you do, please, please, please invite me over. I'll have a margarita with you anytime. Here's some ways to stay positive. This is sort of just a list I put together, and a lot of people talk in the same way. But since freedom seems to be such a big concept in our country, why don't we promote freedom? Or as Elsa said in the Disney movie, let it go, let it go, let it go. There's freedom to let nature take charge. You know, when we stop imposing our will with chemicals and perfect plants, and maybe let nature take its course a little bit, I think that can be a good thing. We can heal the earth by allowing biodiversity in plants, animals, and insects. We'll be healing ourselves. Contact your representatives. Be a squeaky wheel. Fight for the planet. Volunteer work with like-minded people on worthy projects like community gardens. There are all kinds of opportunities to help out, doing restoration work in forest preserves, that sort of thing. And this is a book I was telling you about. What if we get it right? What if we get it right? Visions of Climate Change, of Climate Futures by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. Here's what the book looks like. And I've been reading it, and mine's already coffee stained and a little beat up. And I haven't even finished it yet. It's like 500 pages long. But she has some wonderful insights and interviews. And as you can see, I've already quoted her in this talk. And I would advise folks to pick it up and at least skim through it and see what she has to offer, because she doesn't just give you the gloom and doom. She gives you, here's how we can fix it. What if we did this, and it might actually work for us and get us to survive what we're going through right now. So let's get to work. What can you do? I love this quote. In the past, we have asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty. Now they have to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage water. Who said that? Doug Tallamy, author of Bringing Nature Home, another book I highly recommend. It will change your life. But the impetus on us now is to work even harder. We can't, it's not just growing the perfect rose anymore. It might be about saving the planet. But some folks still haven't gotten the message. I need a crashing sound there. This is not what I call biodiversity. And if you have a home that looks like this and a lawn that looks like that, well, I'm not going to apologize. I don't think it's particularly healthy. Although I got to say, well, I mean, and look, you got the white rock around the house as mulch, and you got none of those plants are native. Although if you look at that basketball pole and net, that was all grown from seed. So I don't know how they did that, but that was pretty cool. But this is what we call a biological desert, as is this. Look at this guy with nobody has a mower like that. He's mowing his putting green, which is not just the front lawn, but the driveway and everything else. Yeah, we're looking at you, pal. Then if maybe this is the way you want to do it, why skip anything growing at all? I mean, why have anything growing at all? Why just, roll it out on concrete? I took this earlier this year. I believe it's in Elmhurst. And you see that tree there in the middle of the AstroTurf? Help me. That I just imagine, I can't, and I'm trying to imagine what they planted it into. Or this is in my neighborhood. I guess you could just mulch everything and put your pots on it. And that's one way to go. So what can you do? Well, you can ease up on the lawns. And I'm going to say this knowing that a lot of people in the big cities like Chicago, and if you're from another big city, they don't care much about their lawns. And I think that's cool. That's great because they don't obsess over them. But a lot of people do, and we have more than 40 million acres of lawn in this country. As I said before, biological deserts, they replace habitat. Watering the lawn generally accounts for 50 to 75% of a home's water use during the summer. And then there's the stuff you put on your lawn. You might buy this stuff called weed and feed. This is the point at which I would ask people, if I were in person, I would say, hey, what is weed and feed? And they would explain to me, well, it's fertilizer, and they put something in it so it kills weeds too, and they call it weed and feed. And I would say, yeah, but the reason they call it weed and feed is because no one would buy it if they called it poison and synthetic fertility. All right, that's not a marketing strategy, but that's what it is, folks. Another quote, each weekend we mow an area the size of New England to within 1 inch and then congratulate ourselves on a job well done. Again, that's Doug Tallamy, and he does say it well. So here's how lawns actually contribute to climate change and how you can fix it. Residential lawn maintenance and landscaping in the U.S., and I love the quotes around landscaping, uses nearly 3 trillion gallons of water, 70 million pounds of pesticides, and 800 million gallons of gasoline annually. Now, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson in What If We Get It Right actually claims that it's 3 billion gallons of gasoline. So I thought that seemed high, and I did some checking, and I can't find any place else that goes over 800 million. But that's still a lot of freaking gasoline, right? And at least 17 million gallons of gasoline is spilled annually just filling lawnmowers. The amount of gasoline spilled by the Exxon Valdez, 10.8 million gallons. So we beat that every single year. In a two-stroke engine, fuel and oil are mixed, so 30% of the fuel doesn't combust, and it gets released into the air. And speaking of synthetic fertilizers, for each ton of nitrogen created, and we're doing this artificially, 4 or 5 tons of carbon are added to the atmosphere. It's an energy intensive production to create synthetic fertilizer. Excess nitrogen in the soil can end up being converted into nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And that also has to do about when you apply all of that nitrogen, especially if you do it before a rainstorm, where it washes off, or where the ground puddles, and then it makes it easier to be converted into nitrous oxide. And by the way, over-fertilization, taking all this fertilizer, all this nitrogen in these bags that the lawn care companies want you to buy and throw down on your lawn, it leads to this. All right? And this is a point I would say, hey, what are we looking at? Well, I'll make it easy for you. Lake Erie in 2017, those are algae blooms. When nitrogen and phosphorus are poured onto these lawns, this is what you get. All right. And in some states, in Illinois, for instance, you can't even, a licensed lawn care company can't even apply phosphorus unless they do a soil test and prove that it's lacking in phosphorus. So you got to be really careful about putting that down on your lawn. All right. And then I would ask, what are we looking at here? And a lot of people say, Louisiana, the Gulf of Mexico. And I would go, right, it's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, wait a second. It's not the Gulf of Mexico anymore. It's the Gulf of no, wait, it's not that either. It's, the Gulf of Stupidity. No, wait. It's really the Gulf of SpaceX debris. Okay. Can we be clear on that? But let's get back to the Gulf of Stupidity here. What you're looking at, the red area is the height of the dead zone, and it's all these nutrients that come down the Mississippi River, and they flow into the Gulf of Mexico. And there's nitrogen and phosphorus. There's silt, which contains a lot of nutrients, and they cause these massive algae blooms, which use up a lot of oxygen. And then the algae die. And the decomposition process sucks up even more oxygen. And it takes all of the oxygen out of that part of the ocean. So nothing can survive. Not a fish, not a crustacean, not a plant. We have these dead zones all over the world. It's not just the United States. There are more than 400 dead zones across the planet, and it's where our nutrients go running into these large bodies of water. So what can you do to be different? Well, you can build a better lawn. You reduce the size. A lot of people who have gardens find that their lawns get smaller and smaller each year. Water more deeply, less often. You don't need to have your sprinkler on for 15 minutes a day at noon in 90-degree weather. Mow high to conserve water and prevent weed germination, generally 2.5 to 3 inches. A lot of people, they think it's a ballpark or a golf course. It's not. Leave your clippings. They provide nitrogen for free, so you're not buying all that nitrogen. And it's much safer than the synthetic stuff. and stop over fertilizing once a year. Really, really for most lawns is just going to be absolutely fine. And that's in the early fall. We're coming up, we're at that time right now to fertilize your lawn. And if you want to do it once a year, now's the time. Tune your mower engine, sharpen your blades, switch to electric, or better yet, push mower if you can. I know some of you have very large yards, so it's not practical for a push mower, but an electric might be. You should learn to tolerate some weeds. I don't think clover is a weed. I do not consider clover a weed. A dandelion, yeah, might be a weed, but it's also adding calcium to your soil. Creeping Charlie, yeah. But Creeping Charlie is a messenger. It's telling you that your soil is compacted or that the drainage is poor. You know, you don't want to shoot the messenger. And knowledge is power. Ask your lawn care service what chemicals they're using. I'm always stunned by the people who hire lawn care services and then they have no idea what's being put into their lawn or how high it's being cut. They don't know anything. They don't ask. Well, you're paying them. They're not paying you for the privilege of coming and working on your lawn. So you should probably ask a few questions. This is my sedge path in my backyard. It's not even lawn. It sort of took over and I let it then. It's a wonderful sedge. More people should plant sedges in their yard. I'm kind of surprised that people don't, but I can walk on that and I never mow it. And it pops up every year and it's soft. It feels good to walk on in your bare feet. That's one way you can go. And there are other alternative lawns. There's micro clover that people plant in their lawn, their yards instead of lawn. There are various lawn substitutes now in the 21st century. And if you want more information on how to do it safely, here's a great place to start. Midwest Grows Green. I've got it on my handout, the link, and they've got PDFs and all kinds of great information on a healthy lawn. All right, here's another way to stave off climate change. Climate victory gardens. What can you do? Plant a climate victory garden. And it's simple. You grow food, you cover your soil, meaning you don't strip it bare in the winter, you leave something there. You compost, you ditch the chemicals, and you encourage biodiversity. End of story, right? You can go to greenamerica.org, and they've got more than 30,000 gardens listed now online who have started what they call climate victory gardens, and they have more information there for you about that. Also, compost, compost, compost. It adds biology to your soil, improves soil structure, improves soil aeration, enhances water retention, provides carbon sequestration, reduces plant pests and diseases, and reduces, and in some cases, eliminates the need for chemical fertilizers. But, and I encourage you to use compost, and those of you who say, I live in an apartment, I'll get to that in a second. There's a much more urgent reason to compost if you can. And that is we waste too much food. And this is not just for people with backyards. This is everybody. Here's how much food is wasted in America. Food waste is responsible for twice as many greenhouse gas emissions as commercial aviation. Let that sink in for a second. It's because we waste about 40 million tons of food scraps each year, or just food, not even the scraps. We waste 40 million tons each year, which is 30 to 40% of the entire U.S. food supply. All right, here's the equivalent or an analogy. You go to a grocery store, you buy 10 bags of groceries, you come home and you immediately throw 3 of them away. In a bad week, you throw 4 of them away. That's how much food we're wasting. It's the single largest component in U.S. landfills. In 2018, this sounds encouraging, doesn't it? 2.6 million tons of food was composted. And you go, yay. That was 4.1% of wasted food. The annual food value wasted globally is $1 trillion. And this is sort of a sidebar. More than 80% of Americans discard perfectly good consumable food simply because they misunderstand expiration labels. Yeah, you don't want to know how long my ketchup bottle has been in my refrigerator. But we need to standardize this so people aren't tossing stuff that they don't have to toss. So to put it simply, here's my graphic. If you throw away your food that you have left over, that is to say, you put it in the garbage, which goes to the landfill, you're creating methane, which is a greenhouse gas up to 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide. If you put your food scraps in a compost pile, you do create carbon dioxide. But like I said, it's 30 times less potent than methane, but you also get biology, nutrients for your soil, water retention for your soil, stormwater mitigation, and other benefits. And biology, as I said, because one of the sayings I used to have for my show is, it's the biology, stupid. Not that you're stupid. It's just a saying I used to have. So it's so much smarter to see that your food scraps go to a compost pile. Now, this is where we get to the place where you say, but yeah, I don't have a backyard. I can't do a compost pile. Well, a lot of places, well, certainly in Illinois, but in other places in the country, you can have somebody come and pick up your food scraps, like you can find at the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. And Earlene Howard, who's sitting there. And this is a business she started up more than a decade ago. And what she does is she comes to your house, she brings a 5-gallon bin, she leaves it with you, comes back in a week. You've put food scraps in the bin, she picks it up, leaves you a clean bin, and you do it again. And she takes it to a commercial composting operation. Boom, done. Voila. You are not contributing to carbon dioxide or as much in the atmosphere because you're composting. And I throw this in here from the EPA because it surprises people. If you look at the bottom where the gray area, it says the worst thing you can do with food is to put it in the landfill. Yes, we know that, or burn it. The second worst thing you can do is compost. And you're going to say, but Mike, didn't you just say composting was wonderful? Well, it is. Except when it comes to food scraps, there are actually better things you can do. Like there are industrial uses, energy created from food scraps, or you could feed animals, or you could feed, holy smoke, people with all that extra food. Probably the best thing you could do is reduce the amount of surplus food so it doesn't have to, well, you don't have to think about what to do with it then. And I bet you didn't even know there was an International Compost Awareness Week. This was this year's May 4th to 10th. There will be one next year. And again, you go to illinoiscompost.org for more information, and that's on the handout. So what else can you do? You can conserve water. All right. Let's remember that climate variability will lead to drought conditions, even in areas that are getting a lot of rainfall, like the Midwest. It does happen. And the right natives in the right place, and I'll get the natives in a second, will send out deep roots, making them less vulnerable to drought. But make sure you get those plants established. Coddle them in the first year the way you would any seedling. I know people, I hear these stories all the time of people buy a bunch of native plants and they throw them in the ground and then they walk away and they say, well, they're natives, they can handle it. No, that's not right. You actually have to water them. Just, they're your babies. Take care of your babies until they're established. You could create a rain garden in your yard. Instead of fighting nature, you got a depressed area, make a rain garden out of it. Rain barrels. I have a couple of rain barrels and I'm surprised at the money you save on water bill. Put your downspouts into your yard, not into the sewer system. We need to replenish, recharge our aquifers. What else can you do? You can plant natives. And this is something that that everybody knows about or should know about. They store greenhouse gases for one thing. They conserve water because they're adapted to local environmental conditions. Once they're established, as I said before, are low maintenance. Once they're established, they benefit wildlife of all kinds, from birds, butterflies, and bees to amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Native plants feed the creatures at the bottom of the food web that then provide meals for creatures on the next level. You learned about this in school, and I'm reminding you of it. And of course, they're beautiful, and they don't rely on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. But people complain, natives are so messy. Well, pollinators don't think so, for one. And here's some photos from my friend Benjamin Vogt at prairieup.com. His information is on the handout as well. Yeah, that's so messy. I don't think I'd want that in my yard. Yeah. Wait a second. How about this? Yeah, that's pretty messy. Well, look at that. What's that wall doing there? It's keeping the mess at bay. I hate it when that happens. Yeah, that hillside. What a mess. This is Benjamin's yard he's in Nebraska. And I forget which city. I should know that. But what I love is his neighborhood. Everybody else has got the lawns there and the driveways, and there's his yard. And I wonder what his neighbors think when they look out. But it is beautiful. It's just gorgeous. This is a shade native garden, so you can do it in the shade as well. And this is one I planted. I'm so proud of myself. I'm patting myself on the back. I'll try not to break my arm. This is on the north side at a church that a friend of mine works at. And she said, and this corner was all hostas and weeds. And we dug it up, and I put in every single one of those plants as a native to this region. The grass is there. Those are sedges. That's the same sedge I have in my backyard. And this is earlier in the year. This is like 4 or 5 months ago. It looks even better now. And this is the first year. It's going to look great next year and even better the year after. And I'm very, very happy about that. Here's another thing you can do. You can join Homegrown National Park. You go to homegrownnationalpark.org. I noticed that is not on my handout. So you might want to write that down, homegrownnationalpark.org. Doug Tallamy helped start this, and it's how planting natives can regenerate biodiversity. You can be part of it. You can have your garden on their map, just like the Green America map we showed earlier. But, what if I like crocuses? See, bees like them. And what about roses? Bumblebees like them. They're not native. Don't worry. Okay, if you have a peony in your yard, which is what we've got here, you're not an enemy of the planet, but try to keep the number of natives in your yard from 30 to 50%. Now, Doug Tallamy says he wants it at 30%. He says 70% of your yard should be natives. I'm cutting you some slack. I'm saying, oh, please, just do half, okay? Half of the plants in your yard, make them natives. And then maybe you'll find you want more. And replace plants with as many natives as you can. A plant dies, put in a native instead. And plant trees and shrubs if you can, especially oaks. Oaks are the best. They support so much insect life. They are just very, very special on this planet. And oh my goodness, please leave the leaves. Would you please leave the leaves? Now, some of you watching this who live in Evanston may have seen this place because I took this in Evanston several years ago. And let's flip it around. There's the house with the leaves, and there's the house without the leaves. Which side do you think has more biodiversity, huh? Here's a reason you need to leave leaves if you can, because invertebrates find home in leaves. It mimics natural ecosystems. Leave some of the hollow stems up. You don't have to cut the plants all the way down. Cut them like to 3 or 4 feet high, because that also provides homes for critters. Tree branches and brush. provide winter habitat. So do dead trees and hollowed branches, as long as they're not in danger of falling on your house or a neighbor's house. Soil. You know, the thing that drives me crazy is when I see the leaf blowers out and they're just blowing up the soil and they are destroying habitat for invertebrates who are trying to overwinter in the soil or even during the year. And if you can, don't clean up your garden too soon in the spring. Let that stuff stay there, because insects don't come out on your schedule. They come out on their own schedule. Now, the reason I say this is these are the kinds of insects you're going to find under the leaf litter in your backyard. Bumblebees, firefly. You want fireflies in the world? You're going to leave some leaves on the ground. Swallowtails overwinter under the leaves. Here's a woolly bear, Isabella tiger moth caterpillar. All right. If you garden, grow your own food if you possibly can. You get better taste, more nutrients, less energy waste from farm to table. All of those in the picture there, they were all grown in my sun-challenged backyard. It can be done. Sometimes I'm scrambling to find enough sun for my vegetables, but it shows that it can be done. All right. For those of you who don't have backyards, I got a few things before I wrap up here. All right. This is what you can do to fight climate change. Stop buying plastics. I don't even know how to say this strongly enough. Plastic products start as fossil fuel, so you're helping the fossil fuel industry. They release greenhouse gases from cradle to grave. They just never stop doing that. This is an organization in Illinois called the Coalition for Plastic Reduction. They are on the verge of helping pass a polystyrene ban in Illinois, meaning styrofoam. That's the commonly used name. That's a trademark name, but polystyrene, expanded polystyrene might soon be a thing in the past as Illinois, and I'm saying go for it. You can recycle. I'll bet a lot of you do already. You can wash your clothes in cold water. You'd be surprised how clean they get. Insulate your home. I had mine insulated from top to bottom just before the pandemic hit, and it also makes it quieter. Well, it's just amazing, the difference in sound. Adjust your thermostat. Okay, I'm not going to brag. Oh, actually, you're going to think I'm crazy. In the winter, I set my thermostat to 60, and a lot of you are thinking, what? Well, that's me, and it doesn't bother me. I wear a sweater. Jimmy Carter told us to wear sweaters if we had to, and I think that's not bad advice. Support a community garden. We talked about volunteering early. That would be a great thing for you to do. Donate your used clothing. In fact, buy used clothing. I know there's some people that would never do that, but it doesn't hurt you. All right, here's one that I just recently became aware of. Banking. This is a quote from Bill McKibben in What If We Get It Right? Excuse me. It's a little harder for people to understand why Chase Bank is a crucial target than why Chevron is a crucial target. Our job is to get people to grasp that your nice suburban branch of Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whatever really should have a large smokestack on its roof, because it is, whether you know it or not, effectively emitting huge amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, probably more than any other building in your nice suburb. Now, that's a little snarky, but the point he's making is they are still supporting the fossil fuel industry's extraction. I mean, it's not just that Chevron and Shell and whoever are putting their money into the banks. It's that the banks are supporting their extraction, continued extraction, even since the Paris Accords. That continues to happen. So when you support those banks, you're helping put more greenhouse gases into the air. I know it's a hard truth. There are community banks, there are credit unions, and they don't do that. It's the 60 largest banks in the world have contributed $4 trillion to the fossil fuel industry in the last few years. Just saying. One more, fast fashion. And I don't know how many of you do fast fashion, but this is not paper, that's leather. That's not in America, as you can imagine. Fast fashion creates 10% of total global carbon emissions, more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. The equivalent of one garbage truck full of clothes is burned or dumped in a landfill every second. I am always stunned when I go into my alley and I see that people are throwing clothes into the garbage. I do not understand that. You can fight fast shipping. Do you really need that package overnight? Probably not. 20 years ago, you couldn't do that. Delivery trucks go out with loads less than capacity, which is a problem. They take less efficient routes to meet delivery times, and they waste fuel. You have a choice. You have a choice in the matter. Opt for slower shipping. If you have an order with several items, have everything delivered on the same day. You can do it. Just need to plan a little bit. All right, here's our final thought of the night. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Who said that? Margaret Mead. So, go out and change the world. Thank you all very much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. That was a lot.
I know. There's a ton of stuff in there. I need to turn this light on. I don't know why it went out on me. Hold on. Yikes.
Oh no, that's great. I mean, this is a lot. I don't know if anyone has a question. Does anyone want to raise a question? Maybe you could put it in the chat. I should have said that early, but it looks like people are mostly thanking you for all of this. That was a lot. That was all different kinds of things, and we really appreciate your focus on all of this.
Well, I try to make it mostly about what you can do in your backyard, because you really can make a difference. But it's also important to know that there are other things, because not everybody has a backyard. And like I said, not everybody can set up a compost pile. But what if you can still get the food scraps out of your kitchen and into composting somehow?
Yeah. No, and that's great. And yeah, your slides on climate change and the disappearance of climate information is really,
I wish I didn't have to add that at this point, but I think it's important to know knowledge is power, and they're taking away the knowledge, and they're hiding it. And I realize that it's not the same anymore. When somebody quotes the EPA, I want to say, well, which EPA? The EPA we used to know and trust, or the EPA we have now?
right.
Which NOAA? The National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration, or I'm sorry, Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration we used to know and trust, or the one we have now? It's
Right.
it gives you pause, which is why so many people are trying to find ways to take that information and grab it before it's gone forever and move it to independent sites.
Right. Nancy, I think this might be Nancy Bratt. She said, Mike, talk about the ripple effect.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah, and I mentioned it to Nancy the other day, and it's the idea that we can make a difference in the world isn't just about what we do in our backyards. It's not about me composting, but it's me talking about composting and explaining to people how you do that, or me getting smarter about lawn care and telling other people. And what happens is that ripples out. And so your effect has so much more power, because it's not just you, because you tell someone and they tell 2 people and they tell 4 people and they tell 10 people. And suddenly this information has gotten out there in a way that redounds to the benefit of all of us.
Right.
So this is one of the things that Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson says in her book, is that we have to create a community about this, or we're not going to change things. We have to trust each other. We need to have that ripple effect. We need to listen to each other. There's not a whole lot of listening going on right now in the world. Well, certainly, let me just say America. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the world. But we have to do this together and find out ways, learn from people who've tried these sorts of things before, and then try them ourselves and see what we can do, and then add our own ideas and improve those other ideas. So that's the ripple effect. And it's going to sound cornball, and I'm sorry. It boils down to love. It boils down to love and trust, and loving the planet as well. I mean, everybody talks about loving their country. What about the planet? What about the earth we walk on? Do we get to love that too, and try to save that as well? So there's all kinds of love.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to end. And it's been a long evening. So thank you so much. I mean, Nancy pointed out that the ripple effect was the reason she was determined to buy an EV car. None of her friends or family had an EV. Someone had to start it. We need to lead. So love and lead, I guess, yeah. Yeah.
I guess. So listen, thank you guys so much for inviting me to do this. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope those of you watching got something out of it. I know I crammed a lot of information in there, and I apologize for that. I try to edit myself. I'm sometimes.
Don't apologize. It's great. It's great. It's perfect. It's perfect.
All right.
You have a good evening.
Everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Yeah.